Good morning, and thank you for joining us. So today's Take30 is going to focus on datasets, which are a relatively new feature in Cognos Analytics. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to cover what is a dataset, come up with some use cases for datasets, other important information for you to know about datasets. Bob's going to do a demo of datasets, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. Now, first, I'm going to light up a poll here. We'll give a few more seconds here to let additional folks vote. We're at about 50% of attendees voting. So this is the result here. So certainly, Cognos Analytics is not unexpected given the topic today, but seems as though we have lots of interest in Tableau and Microsoft BI as well. All right, thank you very much for taking the poll. Bob, if you want to move ahead one slide. So again, this is the reason we get out of bed in the morning, right? Our purpose is to help our clients use data to make better decisions about their business. That's what we're about. Go ahead, Bob. And certainly, this is a holistic view of all the capabilities that we have, right? Our legacy as a BI and data warehouse solutions team. However, we've expanded into experience design, data science, platform managed services. So we're here to help with wherever you are on your analytics journey. Go ahead, Bob. So just a quick reminder, so we've got some new topics listed here for the next 6 weeks. These are a mix of Power BI, Tableau, generically Cloud BI, and then wrapping up with some Cognos focus sessions at the end. And then next slide, Bob. So wanted to bring this to your attention. So we're starting a new program. This is called the Take30 with a BI expert 1-to-1. So we've got on that same link where you can look at the schedule of events. We've got a button for you to click on to set up an appointment or a meeting time with our consulting team regarding any challenges or opportunities that you're facing. Really, any topic is fair game. From strategy to deep dive technical and anything in between. We see this as 20-minute sessions, but certainly if we need more time, we can extend. We ask that you submit questions in advance to ensure that we bring the right resources to the conversation. And definitely look forward to having these one-on-ones with you in the future. So we've got 3 blocks, Thursdays for BI. Over the next 3 weeks. There's a block from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So again, just go to our website, click on that link at the top. It'll take you to this page. Click on the Talk One-on-One and set up an appointment. So thanks very much. So go ahead, Bob. All right. So I'm Scott Masage. I'm the practice director for BI, but the star of the show today is Bob. So Bob, why don't you introduce yourself and take it away?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm on Scott's BI team. I've been with Ironside now for a few years. Before that, I spent probably about 18 years with IBM and Cognos in a number of pre-sales roles, technically focused, some for the Northeast, and then I was on a couple of national teams as well. So I've been working in the Cognos field for longer than I care to admit. So let's get into today's topic, data sets. This is something I actually did a presentation on in Miami at IBM University some time ago, back when we were actually allowed to meet each other in person, which seems to be forever ago. It was a little bit more focused than this. This is a broader look into data sets, but that was more specific to one part, one usage. So what is a data set? Well, according to IBM, datasets are customized collections of items that you use frequently. That comes directly from their website. I would say that picture, if you will, a report that you've created with a simple list, and it could have any number of data items and number of rows, and you run that list and you create a CSV of it, and you download that, and then you upload that back into Cognos, and use that as a data source for analytics in Cognos Analytics. Well, this does that, but simplifies the whole process, and it gives you a lot more flexibility. So this capability was first available in the 1104 release, which was back in September. So it's actually been around for quite some time now. The original intended use was to just improve performance for dashboards and stories. I think it's from our findings, it's wildly underused. But it's one of those things I think can benefit a bunch of people with their dashboards and story performance. A data set can be built from data items in packages or data modules. So the packages can be something from Framework Manager. It could be a Power Cube from Transformer, or it could be a dynamic cube as well. So it's basically across the board. Anything that you can get access to your data, you can build a data set from. They are stored as an Apache Parquet file. They are stored compressed and encrypted in a columnar format. They will tell you on the site that the end result of the stored data in Cognos can actually be considerably smaller than the original size of the data that you brought in. It's similar to the uploaded files and the storage techniques for that. Now, in the 11.1 release, the format was updated, and there was a slight change to the way they were stored. So there's actually utility out there that will update those, or you can manually go in. So if you are upgrading from 11.0 to 11.1, that's something to consider. And the data set can be refreshed on a schedule. So it's just like any other report. You can set those schedules up, and it's down to literally the minute. We'll take a look at that later on, but you can schedule those by minute, hour, day, week, month, year, or by a trigger. So all of the usual suspects for Cognos object scheduling. All right, so what are they good for? Well, as mentioned, it's improved the performance of dashboards and stories and explorations, especially if you're building those objects off of data that was not necessarily intended for dashboards and stories. For reporting, you can schedule these things. You can expect people to wait depending on the amount of data source size. If there's a number of prompts and things like that, your pagination will allow people to work through the data so it doesn't seem to be as slow. But dashboards and obviously stories and explorations need to be very performant. So this will help with those if you're going against data sources that weren't really defined for that. One of the other things we found, and this is actually what I did the presentation in Miami on, is the ability to improve performance for legacy reporting prompt objects. So the ability to take the database out of the equation and build the prompts to load much faster against these data sets. This actually allows you to, and one of the things in that presentation was the fact that you can expand the prompt object usage. So as a report author, I'm sure you've always been told you want to make sure that prompt queries are very quick, very small. But a lot of times you have requirements where I want to make sure that a prompt is only being populated where there's actual data that someone's going to get to see, whether it be security or I want to run it through a fact table. Now, obviously, that's frowned upon, because as soon as you bring in a fact or a set of measures into a prompt query, it's going to slow down considerably, and you don't want that. What a data set allows you to do is to kind of pre-run that prompt set of values and define that and have that available for you. So, and again, because if it can schedule, it can be up to date that way. So it actually expands your ability to provide more targeted prompt data that you wouldn't have before without actually having to go against the database. And of course, it also allows you to combine some different and disparate data sources. So if I have a couple of slow running data sources that I want to pull content in from, I have the ability to join those together in Framework Manager and another number of other ways. But if I want to do something one-off or quickly, or I'm pulling in data from a cube that does not allow you to connect to other relational data sources, I can pull these objects in and then create a data module to build these off of. So that's some of the uses. You can, excuse me, you can directly build a dashboard or an exploration from a data set. We'll show that in a quick demo. And you can also, for any other analytics uses, so if I want to use it for a story or build a report off of it, I can add those to a data module. And from there, I can join them together. I can join them to other relational sources, similar to what I can do with upload files. So currently, the only way to expose a data set to the reporting environment is through a data module. But as for dashboards and stories and explorations, they are available to me as a selectable source. So when I create a dashboard, story, or exploration, I can pull in those data sets and do some of the analytics off of those. All right. So quickly, let's Scott, any questions before I go any further?
Yeah. So I guess our first question: has anything new been developed relative to data sets since the release of Cognos Analytics 11.1.1? Or do you know of anything new that's coming up?
Excellent question. So actually, for building this presentation out, I contacted the offering manager. So there's nothing new since 11.1. And one of the things we already mentioned. So the 11.0 version was a certain format. They've changed that a bit for performance, and we'll get to see some numbers on that in a moment. Nothing new since then. So what they are expecting, though, and it's a little bit too early to get any details on this. Obviously, it's 11.6 just came out not too long ago, but they're planning on a number of improvements for data sets in the next release, which is 11.1.7. No, I do not know when that's going to be. They've been fairly consistent with their release schedule, so we can assume it won't be too much longer. But looking forward to seeing what those improvements are, and I'm sure before it actually comes out, we'll hear something from them. So excellent question.
So and certainly everyone, I would invite you to put your questions into the question section of GoToWebinar, and don't be shy. We'll ask them as we get them.
All right, thanks. All right, so what else should I know? So these recommendations actually come from IBM. So having a conversation with these guys a while back, interactive performance. So if you're on 11.0X, any one of the 11.0 versions, they suggest that you keep the row counts below 2 million. Now, this is after aggregation and summarization. So to put it in context for anyone who's ever built a power play cube or used transformer, I'm not talking about, I might have 100 million rows in a database, but based on the items I've selected, those will group and aggregate to a much smaller subset of values, because I'm not going to go into getting the actual detail of those. This is conceptually for dashboarding. So I'm not looking at, I don't want to see every order or every SKU or all of the detail information. I want to roll that up and I'm going to build a dashboard off of it. So the idea is that end result is going to be under 2 million. You'll see here that in the 11.1, they said keep it below 8 million. I've actually seen things online recently. They said that people have gone up to about 10 million and seen some pretty good performance. So that's awesome. Data sets are processed by the query service and the compute service. The compute service is new. I believe the original code name was Flint. The mission of that was faster queries on uploaded files and data sets, which is the Apache Parquet files. It gets its own JVM on the application tier, and it uses Spark SQL internally to go after those data objects. So a little bit about performance there. So what else? Preliminary tests for 11.1 versus the 11.012, and then ultimately basically was the same thing. It was 11.013, which was the stable version for the 11.0 release. Reports running up to 30 and 40% faster when accessing in the millions of rows. Dashboards, obviously, and that's an important part of it. Row data sets are 80 to 90% faster in the million plus range. You will see that the dashboards on the smaller volumes are about 20% faster. There's only so much in a smaller data set. There is overhead that's going to happen that you just can't get over. And if you go back, there's going to be a link in this at the end that we talked about the original presentation we did on the prompting. The values are not astronomical. The difference between the query going against a database and the query going against the data set it's a small percentage sometimes that you're getting as a benefit, but it's more consistent, and you're not worried about that jump back and forth across to the database. So you've got the baseline of work that needs to be done for both, and then the result set's coming back a little bit faster for the data sets. You're also not worrying about, on the data set end, any other contention on the database at that time. So they are stored in the Cognos Analytics content store. They are similar to uploaded files, but uploaded files are now stored externally. Once they're requested, they are actually brought out onto the local server, and that is done so that the query engine can define its query plan and take advantage of caching. So it's able to move it around. One of the things I think that might keep these two objects separate in the underlying technology, although it's always going to probably be Parquet and they'll be similar that way, because I can actually schedule a data set to run and refresh, I'm going to want to keep that in the content store because I can control that refresh process and then move that along. Where uploaded files, I can't refresh those. I don't know where that file came from. That's going to have to be a manual process. So they can treat those two a little bit differently. All right, so before we hop into a quick demo, Scott, any other questions come up?
Yeah, so let's see. So the question is, we have a multi-server environment. Are there any special considerations we need to be aware of when using data sets?
Oh, excellent. And that kind of on the topic we just talked about. So because of the fact that they are stored in the content store and then moved out to the server locally, that's no longer an issue. So originally there were some issues with that, with communicating across multi-server dispatchers and getting to that content. Now that it is available in the content store, any query service or dispatcher that requests it will have access to it. So if you've got a single server install or a multi-server install with dispatchers across multiple virtual machines or physical machines, that should not be a problem. Excellent question.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to hop into a quick demo. I'm just going to create a quick data set. I'm going to show some data set options, then we can show the scheduling as well. So let me bring up my browser here. So currently in Cognos Analytics, this is our cloud instance of it, and it is the 11.06, so it is the latest version. If I open up team content, I'll see I've got a couple of packages here. If I click on any one of these, you'll see that I have the usual suspects: create a report, exploration, dashboard, data module, but I can also create a data set. So if I go ahead and click on that, and this is a very simple, very easy to use interface. And again, it almost looks like the reporting environment in report authoring, where I'm just creating a very simple list report. So from this, if I just go into my metadata here, I'm going to go ahead and grab sales. I'm just going to grab a couple of product objects. So product line, product type, and product. I'm just going to drag those in, and you'll see that I have those values available to me. Now, if I don't want to preview those, I can just turn that off. So I'm not actually going to see the data. I'm just going to see a placeholder. So again, similar to what I would see in the report authoring environment. And I can grab a couple of facts here as well. So quantity, revenue, gross profit. I'll drag those in, and similar to a simple list, I'm going to see those values come in as well. Upper right-hand corner, you see the reprompt button. So that is there. So if your underlying query subjects that you're using to populate this list has any prompts in it, it will refire those off. So if you're you change your mind midstream and you want to get a different set of data objects, you can do that through this. I also have the ability, so if I open this up, so I can do some filtering and sorting. So if I want to filter a specific column, so if I only want to bring back a certain subset of data, I can do that here. I can also sort the data. It is recommended that you do sort the data based on the expected usage. There's a couple of things that they've talked about as far as making these things work a little bit better for, for your use. So depending on how you're going to use this, if you have some predefined sorting that you know you're going to use, go ahead and do that, because that's going to make it easier for the result set to be applied to what you're trying to use it for, and the filtering as well. So that's going to help that. So once that's defined, I can go ahead and save this and then schedule this. What I want to do really quickly, though, is let's go out into my home page. Now I've created a ridiculously simple, I have a small test CSV file that I brought in, and I created a data module for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a data set from that. And again, it's very, very simple data. But to show what I mean by the two options that we see at the bottom here. So summarize detail values, suppressing duplicates or relation data sources, and then row suppression. So if I turn summarize off, this will actually return all of the data that I have access to. So I'm going to go ahead and sort that ascending, make sure I have that defined. And you'll see it's very, very simple. I have a dimension and a couple of facts. So I have one entry for A, I have two entries for B, I have two entries for C. For A, I have zeros, and for E, I have just nothing, no values at all. So if I click on the summarize, and this is what we talked about before, I may have billions of rows, but my end result set's going to be considerably smaller because I'm aggregating and summarizing this stuff. If I click on that icon, you'll see that the B's are now aggregated, the C's are now aggregated. I still have A's and E's though. So if I want to click on the row suppression actually works the same way that suppression in a list in Report Studio would work. So if I want to go ahead and hide those values and not make them part of the result set, I can just turn on row suppression. That's going to limit the data set. So this is, again, very simple. One of the other recommendations they have for this is column-based. So if you can, it would be better for performance if you built more specific subsets of data sets to your needs than to build a 500 column data set and then use that for a lot of different things. Because the data set, the larger it gets on rows and columns, the more processing that's required in the back end to make that perform quicker. So that's one of the things you want to keep in mind moving forward. So what I'm going to do just really quickly, I'm just going to go ahead and save this. I'm going to save it to my content and call it, actually I'll just call it new data set. And really quickly, I'm going to go back out to the welcome page of my content. And so if I go into new data set, I can refresh this manually. I can go ahead and edit this and change it. One of the nice things about the data sets is I can add fields to it very easily, where with an uploaded file, that's a little bit more difficult. So there's no problem here. Obviously, I don't want to remove things because if someone had built something off of that, that's no longer going to work. But if I go ahead and click on properties and schedule, I have the full capabilities of scheduling. So my type, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, by trigger. If I want to do daily, I want to do it every day, every hour, every minute. So again, the flexibility of being able to create these data sets, use them for dashboards, exploration, stories, in reporting, add them to a data module, combine them with other information, and refresh them on your schedule, I think is a real benefit for the reporting and analytics environment. So let's go back. So that was the demo. Any additional questions, Scott?
Okay, so I don't know if we've answered this one yet. Does the data source for the data set need to be DQM, so dynamic query mode?
Excellent question. It does not. Exactly like a report authoring environment. So if I have a cube, power play cube or a dynamic cube, I'm going up against an old CQM data source. I can pull that data out. It's literally just creating a list, running that, and then storing the result set. So it doesn't really care what the source is. After these are created, obviously, everything's DQM because of the Spark engine in the background and all of the other things going on. But the original source does not necessarily have to be a dynamic query mode source.
Okay, so we got another one here. So without naming names, can you talk a bit about data set work that you've done for customers, right? And like what did you do? What was the value of that effort?
Yeah, so some time ago, and this is pre-COVID, so a lot of things have changed. Things have been put on the back burner. But we were working with a company that had a very, very complex. They called it a dashboard, but it was more of a reporting application, and it had a lot of JavaScript in it and a lot of prompt objects, and the prompt objects all were cascading. So what we originally did was based on a lot of JavaScript work, we combined a lot of different prompts to determine what was available so the queries would run and bring the results set back. The problem is some of these were actually coming off of fact tables, which is, the first run is going to be a little bit slower. After that, it's fine because it's cached, but the first runs during the day were very, very slow. We never got to an implementation point yet anyway, but we've been discussing with them the possibility of taking all of the prompts that are populated on those pages and diverting them to data sets. So, it's a data mart, so as long as it's refreshed on a daily basis with the data mart, the data is up to date. And then that way it would allow those first versions of all of those to run. Once the cache is gone, everything has to go back to the database, and it slows that down. And some of these could be rather large. There were, tens of thousands of entries in the original query that was pulled back, even though that the end user would only be shown maybe a handful because of the previous selections they made. So the concept was we were going to use the data set to pull that back. And there's, you can add those to it. It's report authoring has the ability to pull in multiple sources, so I can create a data module for prompting and use a package for the reporting and apply all of those filters. So good question.
Great. Okay. All right. So we are at the end of our allotted time. So I want to thank you all for joining and remind you of the upcoming calendar of events. So next week, we are going to be talking about Power BI and Excel integration. Lastly, I will remind you again about the Take30 one-to-ones. Certainly, if you've got a topic you want to discuss, we're happy to spend time with you exploring it. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.